Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 95, in which I interview Very Honored Frater RC. But first, the real Rosenkreuz Orden. This is the segment in which Frater IT recites the Fama Fraternitatis in the original German, and I in the original English translation, all the while listening to music from The Legend of Zelda.
Obwohl wir aber freiwillig bekennen,
Although we do now freely confess that the world is much amended within 100 years, yet we are assured that our axiomata shall unmovably remain unto the world's end, and also the world in her highest and last age shall not attain to see anything else, for our rota takes her beginning from that day when God spake fiat, and shall end when he speak periat. Yet God's clock striketh every minute, where ours scarce striketh perfect hours. We also steadfastly believe that if our brethren and fathers had lived in this our present and clear light, they would more roughly have handled the Pope, Mohammed, scribes, artists, and sophisters, and had showed themselves more helpful, not simply with sighs and wishing of their end and consummation. When now these 8 brethren had disposed and ordered all things in such manner, as there was not now need of any great labor, and also that everyone was sufficiently instructed, and able perfectly to discourse of secret and manifest philosophy, they would not remain any longer together, but as in the beginning they had agreed, they separated themselves into several countries, because that not only their axiomata might in secret be more profoundly examined by the learned, but that they themselves, if in some country or other they observed anything, or perceived some error, they might inform one another of it. Their agreement was this: first, that none of them should profess any other thing than to cure the sick, and that gratis. 2. None of the posterity should be constrained to wear one certain kind of habit, but therein to follow the custom of the country. 3. That every year, upon the day C, they should meet together at the house S. Spiritus, or write the cause of his absence. 4. Every brother should look out for a worthy person, whom after his decease might succeed him. 5. The word CR should be their seal, mark, and character. 6. The fraternity should remain secret 100 years. These 6 articles they bound themselves one to another to keep, and 5 of the brethren departed. Only the brethren B and D remained with the father Frater RC a whole year. When these likewise departed, then remained by him his cousin and brother J.O., so that he hath all the days of his life with him 2 of his brethren. And although that as yet the church was not cleansed, nevertheless we know that they did think of her, and with what longing desire they looked for. Every year they assembled together with joy, and made a full resolution of that which they had done. There must certainly have been great pleasure to hear truly and without invention related and rehearsed all the wonders which God hath poured out here and there through the world. Every one may hold it out for certain, that such persons as were sent, and joined together by God and the heavens, and chosen out of the wisest of men, as has lived in many ages, did live together above all others in highest unity, greatest secrecy, and most kindness, one towards another. Our guest tonight is a very old friend. So, without further ado, let's get to the interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just got to do my canned intro, you know.
Yeah.
It's all about the canned intros. How you been?
Oh, gosh. Well.
On the various levels.
I mean, busy. On the various levels. There's so many levels. Yeah, to where to begin. Well, Halloween is always, a transformative, powerful time.
Yeah.
It's never what you expect it to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely the case.
I'll be at a seance this time.
Oh, yeah?
The first 360-degree live broadcast seance, if I'm not mistaken.
That's okay. Say more.
It's something. That's at the Crooked Path in Burbank. But I guess it'll be on YouTube live.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's the future already. Well, we used to talk about that a lot. I mean, it's just it's fascinating how out in the open everything can be. And I always found that to be the case. The more secretive you were, the more suspicious it was, or whatever. I think it was once someone told me, they're like, "Oh, I just leave my grade books and occult stuff lying around, and my girlfriends, they never even take notice of it, but as soon as you put it in like a clothing drawer or something,
right, hide it underneath
friends
some underwear."
Discovering my Wicca books when I was like 12 years old, and I was like, the shame, and one of them was like, my mom does that. We were like, oh my god, Satan. Yeah, those were that. That was a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very interesting hearing, especially in the last year since we tried to do this, because I don't know, for whoever's
this
listening.
is like our fourth time trying to record an episode, I think.
This is the second time we recorded once before for like 3.5 hours, and then it wasn't saved.
Yeah, it didn't record.
We tried to do.
Yeah.
That was probably a good thing, because we really got into a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think it was good for you and I to talk and kind of find out where we were both at. But Joe was there, so that's kind of sad that we lost that.
That is very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we have to go there right away?
Oh no! I mean, people already know from if they've heard previous episodes. People. Yeah. We talked about it with Daniel, but yeah, we can come back to that if you'd like. But I mean, moment of silence for Joe, of course. But yeah, well, just right off the bat, just so people who are about to like get bored and tune out, get the thrust of the point. You have a book out right now that people might want to download or look at in time for Halloween. Yeah,
it's an old script for a ceremony of Azrael, Invocation, and Celtic psychopomp mysteries for a group setting that's got some really good formulas in it, and really fun sort of scripted parts that can be adjusted as people want, the old school psychodrama stuff that we learned so well with. And that's always been a big love of mine in the tradition, is to write those things. And so this was an old script that I found, which was from the very last time that we all did a big Azrael invocation ceremony back in 2009. I guess it was a reunion of sorts before the end of the end. And it was a powerful night, interesting night. Again, very transformative. I don't think most of us never saw each other again after that. I guess it was 9 years ago.
Well, I'm trying to get my friend Robbie to go to an Azrael, and he's paranoid that it's gonna like bring a death energy. So he might hear this and be like, "Oh, I never saw anybody again. I don't want to not see anybody again, so I'm gonna not go to the Azrael." So why should a person invoke Azrael? Like, what's the benefit of, like, let's say a beginner looking into it, or would you advise against it?
I mean, traditionally, I think people are advised definitely against that in the beginning, right? I mean, right. I remember I was told to wait till like practicus before you even consider it, and then a bunch of adepts all freaked out and were like, no, that's all, you can't touch Azrael till you're an adept. Of course, and then, we both know that there's, but then there's stories of, certain senior adepts starting practicus scryers with the 30th ether because it's closest to the material plane, right? We know those stories. So,
yeah, and I know I did Azrael work.
That's our
with my mom and Lola. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me name dropping her on the Azrael work we did in the Hollywood Cemetery.
Well, yeah, it was back then. I mean, I missed a lot of the more rugged early days, but because I was abroad for so much.
Yeah.
But you guys did a lot of really fun experimental stuff back in there. But that's how it always is before you get to a certain size as an organization, right?
Yeah, and then it becomes more kind of encrusted, and there's like rules and.
Well, that's what happened with the early churches. Same stuff, right? Once they're in the catacombs, all these deep mysteries and these powerful long, ceremonies and fastings and stuff, and then you get to a bigger. Next thing you know, we have mega churches.
Right.
And, evangelical broadcast TV and all that. So it changes the way it changed. I don't know. I think it affects the difference between sacred and profane space. It makes it harder to maintain them. They get blurred, and next thing you know, spiritual transformation becomes, how much money do I have?
Right. Well, it's interesting, that example. It went through the hourglass of course, the Council of Nicaea, and then part of what the catacombs was, remained in that narrow part of the hourglass by way of the Vatican. And one could say like Greek Orthodoxy and Russian Orthodoxy and Serbian, like all the Orthodox churches are remaining in that space of, we have the only truth. It's the truth that was written down in 325. Let us explain it to you again. Where because of, thanks to the Gutenberg press and a few other, Martin Luther, the first one, now then it went out the other side of the hourglass, and so now we have mega churches, but we also have all these different denominations, all these different writings. We have C.S. Lewis, like a whole plethora, if you will, of ways of looking at Christianity.
Yeah.
Where at the beginning there was also a plethora of ways of looking at Christianity, and even those old texts are making a comeback in the form of Gnostic churches and groups. So
Gnosticism's gotten huge, right?
Yeah,
which is interesting because I've spent so much of my career, especially my academic life, writing against Neoplatonism and just Platonism in general. It's funny to see Gnosticism coming back, and but I'm suspicious of the philosophical underpinnings behind how it's mostly received, because I know there's not, they don't really get that deep into the philosophy of what is Gnosticism, and Gnosticism in history was so many different things, like many dozens of different things. Like Gnosticism's, the different branches of it contained more varieties perhaps than Christian churches that we have today. And there's just so many. I mean,
including like Branch Davidians,
and that's not even
Mormons,
talking. I mean, if you count
those,
there's a debate. There's problems with both of those in terms of classical Christianity, especially Nicene, because Nicaea decided that God is one, and Jehovah's Witnesses recognize three separate supernatural entities. And that's problematic for monotheism, I think.
Interesting.
That's something people actually gloss over a bit. And, Mormonism just has a whole bunch of other Masonic fun embedded deeply into it.
Yeah. But I mean, right there in the center of the hourglass, it's just the Council of Nicaea and the 7 ecumenical councils.
These are the things I find like theologically fun. I mean, you can go to bat against any of them, especially like the orthodoxies, all the doxies, and all that stuff. I mean, but most of the best, it's always about the people, and I've met great people in every single branch. flavor, and it's most of my favorite ones are the ones that always espouse doctrine or dogma with a slight smirk or a wink, and I know most of the priests and religious people that educated me throughout my life, most of them were academic scholar intellectuals, so they're sort of hybrids, but they're also at the same time sort of the mainstream leadership of the church. You just don't notice them much because they're so busy actually doing what they're doing, and which is highly focused on social change. I mean, there's like a heavy dose of rigorous academic scholarship, and then on the other side, you have a high dose of social change and hard work. Like, I mean, one of my favorite theologians is the Irish guy, Franciscan Diarmuid O'Murchu, who's from County Cork, and one of his great books is called Quantum Theology, where he, does one of the first attempts to meld quantum physics into theology. And he said to me that once he read quantum physics, theology just started making more sense to him. Mm-hmm. A lot of his writings circle around the loci of power in Ireland, where the pagan churches were, where the statues of Mary are now. He'll look at well, why is the statue there? And they'll say, well, that's because that's where the rock was. And why is the rock there? Well, that was the place where the power was. And it just goes all the way back. And there's less division of it over there. And he studied a lot of that in his sort of quantum theological writings. But he's still, at the same time, he's a hardcore Franciscan religious. And most of his work is done. His basis is in London's poor district, where he just works, with poor people.
Nice. Yeah,
I mean, what a mixture of social change and academic rigor, hey?
Yeah. I was pointing out in my workshop the other day that a lot of basically if you wanted to do things that weren't really condoned by the church, then the best place to be was inside the church. Because if you were a Jesuit priest or a Benedictine abbot, then you could get away with being Athanasius Kircher or Johannes Trithemius.
No, for sure.
But yeah, in present day, it still goes on, I guess. I mean, I know there's like a Knights of the Knights of the Templar of the Holy Sepulchre or something like that, an order that exists within the Catholic Church. And I remember the priest at the church I used to sing at was initiated into it and showing people his little pins, and it was like, interesting. So they're going to own that even after they killed them all. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, I did the basic sort of family stuff, like the Knights of Columbus, the Roman Catholic Church, and then, of course, the Freemasons from my great-grandfather.
Now,
neither of those stuck at all.
Yeah.
Really.
I heard there's something in the Knights of Columbus, like maybe an old book, but it says if you can kill a Catholic and get away with it, you should. Or not a Catholic, a Freemason. If you can get away with killing a Freemason, you should do it.
They were sort of made up as a foil to the Freemasons. The Catholics were like, well, we need a version.
Yeah.
Kids in a candy store. If he has that, I want that too.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem side of all this, and that's why I was making the point earlier. It's about the people. It's never about the flavor of the faith. I mean, one of the things I like about your work online is that you've been making such a great movement toward unification and overlooking what divides us and looking for what unites us as
thank you. I appreciate it.
Practitioners. Well, that's always what I've admired. I mean, heaven help me if I recount the stories you told me of running into I don't know, it was someone at the door. It was, missionaries at the door. And
that was my dad.
Gave them a lecture. Oh, was it your dad? That's why you told me the story.
Oh no, there was my version. There was the time the Mormons came to my house, and I sat down with them and talked to them, and I ended up causing one of them to have a crisis of faith. But then there was my dad in 1982 or something. There were Jehovah's Witnesses that came to the door, and he answered it naked. And he was a really big guy with a beard, and he said, "You have disturbed the great ritual. You must leave now, but stay on the path, for there are nuns buried in the yard." And then he slammed the door, and they ran off.
Yeah, that's classic.
He was a little bit less ecumenical.
I know. Right. You got to have your fun with it. Especially, I mean, there was a lot more hostility, sort of, even, back then, even when I was young, right, there was a lot of sort of
there was the satanic panic and anything weird.
Yeah. Oh, well, we all, it was like it became hard to wear a trench coat overnight. Yeah. I did open the door to Jehovah's Mormons once with a black robe and my Wiccan. I think I was 13 at the time. My Atheism.
Nice.
I did that. Yeah. But I don't think we were actually. I wasn't actually doing any work at the time. It was just something we had to do.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. Well, that was my idea of reckless teenage life. Then you get back to reading your Alephus Levi, and catching up on, Agrippa.
Yeah. For people who are, listeners of the podcast who don't know, what should we know you as? Like, what name or names do you want revealed?
Oh, I like RC.
RC.
I mean, everyone I know still knows it.
Cool. So should we veil your other name, or
no? We can avoid that for now.
Okay. How about
bands? I'm in a career transition. I mean, it's not like I hide it exactly, but
right.
It's a career transition time, and I'm trying to exit gracefully from my past career and into this new third phase of life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm also don't want any disturbance. On the just like I've got family members dying and stuff, so it's like keep the volume low.
Extra energy.
Yeah. Like my mom just told me she had cancer, so
oh Jesus.
That's just yesterday or the day before. I don't know.
I'll get into my astral vault and send some of that good pink energy over.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, she wouldn't want me, of course, saying that, but she'd love work. She'd totally love that. Her memory's not really what it is. She doesn't remember, a lot of the things we talk about from one time to the next. So. Yeah.
But okay, so who is Frater RC? Like, just people.
Well,
I know, yeah. But I mean, everything
know.
We've talked about didn't get recorded. So, what do you want people to know about Frater RC? This is your opportunity to write your autobiography real quick.
Well, I already.
Not real quick.
So that's you're right. You're totally right. So you can check out my autobiography online along with everything else.
Oh, okay.
It'll be out in the next few weeks.
Oh, nice.
If not by the end of the week, though it might be on pre-order. I don't know, because there's so many that I'm releasing.
Yeah. So how do we get to these books if people don't have?
These are all on Kindle, Amazon.
Oh, okay. So we go to Amazon and type in Frater RC.
Yeah, you can do that,
and then that'll come up with everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, the Azrael Invocation was the first I released because it was, Halloween, and I was, I've been doing the experimenting of, well, I'll talk about my own alchemy some other time, but maybe not right. But yeah, here, how do I pitch this? It's, the invocations are modeled on the classic ones we know and love for Osiris and Isis and that sort of thing. And as you know, I wrote a few back in the day, and they became sort of overnight standards, and it's but they were never released or added to the grade material because, as you know, was pretty tight-fisted with what got in and out of grade material. It didn't really expand and contract too much until the end, when, of course, he turned it all over to me to rewrite entirely. I only got up to Theoricus before, the schism happened, but it was a lot of work. That's one of the reasons why I was so sort of out of touch with the politics of, why everyone was so upset about politics and bantering. I had so much work to do. I was just overwhelmed with how much work I was doing, and no one really had any understanding of it. Like it definitely overthrew my life.
Yeah, I think we had a top-heavy situation most of the time down in California. So, we had, initiations where everybody was in the second order. Or, we had a rule that all the major officers had to be in the second order, where in Canada there was a practicus that was cancellarius, and stuff like that.
We never had a practicus that was cancellarius. Never, ever. No, that was
unofficial.
Sort of
I'll bleep out her name, of course.
Well, there'd be assistants, right? And then
right. Well, she was an assistant, but there was nobody else there. Like, she was the one doing it.
Oh, well, that would have been in the last, the closing down months.
Yeah, I think that was.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, in the closing down months, that was a totally different scenario, really.
Yeah.
Well, that was Schism. That was like, that's hardcore like Schism. All we needed was Crowley in the street with a mask and the picture would be complete. I mean, we had David Griffin. He did his magic act. And so like, that was one of the things people were asking me recently, because I got accosted by my beloved fraters on the street. Not on the street, we got together. It was really interesting over the winter to reconnect with some old friends and new ones. And there was questions about what actually happened with David Griffin's whole thing, and it was funny. It was a funny story too.
I remember that.
He
showed up.
He broke into the front door. Like,
what?
They're like, all you needed was like, it was almost like a comedy routine, like a laugh track. Like, you could see him just sort of tripping over the metal iron fence that was meshed up, and quite stylishly and gothically, I might add, and then falling onto the sofa over the bikes and like knocking over Santa's Christmas cookies and the marks on his head, and our we got this imposing, beautiful sentinel goddess with a massive, like, the sword was fucking huge. I could barely lift it when I first got a chance to touch it. I think when I was in Zelator, like in 97, I guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I could barely lift it because it was forged next door at the steel shop that was being run by, one of our stores, and it was massive. It was like you could not lift it. Like, the thing was probably like 5 feet long, yeah. And it wasn't really sharp, but it was pointy, and like you would just drop it on someone and it would probably kill them. So that was pretty, but she could just, we
had pillars at ISIS toward the end that if they fell on, I was always ready to go sacrifice my life to save the neophytes. If someone bumped into it and it fell over because it was so damn huge and heavy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy some of the sizes of.
Remember that huge double cubicle altar?
Yeah,
that came up to like the shoulder or something. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, we had big stuff.
Yeah. So someone came up with the sword to Griffin?
He just like,
So there was a ceremony happening?
We were in the middle of an initiation. He like tries to break in. I mean, the story that apparently he tells is that he like walked into the place invisible and appeared on the Hierophant's throne and
dodging the heroin needles and crack pipes.
Yeah, cast a curse over the whole place and masturbated. But no, he just sort of was like, "Yo, can I come in? I'm David Griffin." I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here, douchebag!" And I came running up behind our sentinel and was like, "What the hell?" And then he got thrown the hell out. So it wasn't Aleister Crowley in the streets, and at no time no Yeats, despite loving to write about him. That was just.
But you went through two schisms. There was the earlier schism with Frater RC.
There are
episode 10.
Well, I missed that one because I was in school in Vienna.
Oh, okay. But you were technically
I was in Vienna, and then I came back and met with you guys I was a member. I mean, I was from when I joined up until I joined, and then I did all of Neophyte. I had to do that alone because I was 15, and they were worried about mixing me with all the adults. So, they had me trained completely separately, and that's something that you can read about. It's a really interesting story for me to have gone through that way. And then I was did the quote-unquote year abroad in Vienna, getting away from my mad family. And then when I came back and flew straight down to Power Week and met you.
Oh yeah, and I remember that moment. I had just finished a gig in Pasadena.
That's right, yeah.
And at the Loft, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's on Green Street for anybody who knows Pasadena, in Old Town, what they call Old Town, which was invented in like 1991. But anyway, what am I talking about? Yeah, so there was a bunch of people, and we were all coming back in separate cars, and we all walked in, people were loud, and then you were there, and like 3 other people, like sitting on the couch. And
I think that was actually the second time we met.
And that was
when you were in Philosophus then, and I was in Practicus then.
Oh, when was the first time?
The first time would have been Power Week 97. So when I was in Zelator and you were in Theoricus,
I missed that
you were the
Power
first
Week.
person. You were the first time I heard. Oh, I don't think so. Really?
Yeah,
You
I
showed
wasn't
up,
there.
I think, for the party at the end of the week.
Maybe I was. Was I all beat up?
Mm-mm.
I got beat up that week.
Oh,
I was in the hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How
Sure, I'm
strange.
pretty sure I remember you. I'll go back through the photos and see if I can find you.
Yeah, that was the one
But
Poke Runyon
maybe I
came
didn't.
to.
Maybe I did. No, that Poke. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you could be right. Yeah,
With
you
the
were right
cipher
about that.
manuscripts.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember my mom telling me about that, and like
Yeah,
there was
that's
this
right.
weird history.
I forgot about Poke. Yeah, he's a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a mind-blowing experience for me.
How cool. Yeah, I was thick in my what happened was there's a guest somewhere in the 20s. I won't name him specifically because he's now gone on to a different career. But I interviewed him on the podcast, but we didn't reveal that he used to be my teacher in the Golden Dawn. So he had gotten they had stolen his journal, the Second Order at ISIS, and photocopied incriminating pages from his personal diary and handed them out to the Second Order that was present. And then when he arrived for the Sunday meeting, they had all read it, and they had all already decided to throw him out, or basically to have this tribunal about it. And somehow he was able to tell me about it before the tribunal. So I gave him the advice that he should say, okay, yeah, I'm guilty of writing that in my personal journal. I would like to take a vote, an anonymous vote, and everybody let me know, was it right for them to take my journal and photocopy it? And everybody said no, except one person said yes, and one person said yes and no. And so then he left. And yeah, at that time I was like, look, Mom, I appreciate the teachings, but the people that are in power are fucked. And so I don't want anything to do with that organization anymore. So this was, I decided I wanted to go up to Philosophus and leave in Philosophus, not in Practicus. I went up to Philosophus and then left, basically. And then...
That's right.
And then,
That's right.
So I was directing a play, and then we started a band, and then I got beat up. It was really stupid. But yeah, so I ended up in the hospital. So 90 by 98, by Power Week 98, that was the one that I was around. I went down the other day to Echo Park Lake, and they have lotuses there. They weren't blooming, but I had a tea ceremony. Someone did a Chinese tea ceremony for a friend of mine and I. And I was remembering about how when they did the ISIS invocation in Power Week 1996, she had the Texans. You remember the Texans, right?
Oh, yes.
And one guy from Pennsylvania who
should give him a shout out.
Left after that. And they put on boots and were wading out into Echo Park Lake in the middle of the night illegally to steal lotuses for the invocation of ISIS the next day.
Oh.
So we had real lotuses there. That was my mom.
I miss those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I stay in touch with.
Yeah, I stay in touch with them. It was a little rough getting through the election, but once I realized that I'd rather maintain the love of brotherhood than permanently shun people in the name of just not being able to understand why they would support Trump. Now it's okay, well, we're still brothers, we're still magicians, we still have a lot of things in common. We just apparently don't see eye to eye on some really fundamental things.
Yeah, no, that's how it is.
I think it's just one of them that's like that. But the other ones are yeah, I think he's just fucking with everybody. He's just being contrary for the sake of being contrary. But maybe not. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I can guess who we're talking about, but I'm not sure.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
I don't really, again, for me, the politics is.
That's literal politics, because there was order politics, but then there's government politics, world politics.
Yeah, I guess I don't even know where to begin on the state of politics. I don't have much. I mean, it's not really, I don't know, is it fruitful to talk about it in a...
It's interesting.
When we talking about spirituality that we don't normally talk about?
Like, where are the lines? Because they used to put a line between, like, sexuality and religion. You know, like, is there really a line between magic and politics? You know, I mean, especially with that fucking frog.
Well,
you know?
no,
that
I mean,
frog meme.
it's a, you know, I guess you could call it even. I mean, that was the subject that changed my life, that caused the schism up here, that, like, you know, ruptured
like Bush becoming president.
Well, just all the fallout after that, you know, and all the madness, like, you know, when me and the other, you know, all the me and like the entire, you remember the whole country up here was schisming off, and
right.
you know, I ended up writing with the other, you know, I went with the other adepts just to prevent, like, complete shattering, and, you know, we wrote that whole document, and a lot of it was taking aim at weird stuff, like borderline, if not flat out, black magic stuff going on in the name of politics, and you know, attacks against lawyers and David Griffin's drama and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that guy's really caused a lot of grief, eh?
David Griffin or Voldemort?
Yeah, well, what's the difference?
I guess that's, yeah, exactly. I mean, well, now it seems like David Griffin is the one that has an order.
Politics. Like, what's the difference between electing Hitler or Cthulhu?
Right. I mean, there's interesting things to observe in the evolution of technology alongside the politics. You know, like, do you keep up with that show Black Mirror?
I watched a little bit.
It's so good. There's one that kind of was a little too prophetic, I think. That was it was not the greatest episode, but it was where this cartoon took over and became president, or became prime minister or something like that, by just being outrageous and disgusting and talking about its boner, and then talking shit about everybody else and interrupting them, and then everybody just loved him, and then they elected this cartoon character. And then, you know, but that was before Trump. That was like before he was, I think, even talking about running, or, you know. So it's like really odd how on point that episode was for what ended up happening. It was just like everybody had to talk about him because he was the thing that was going on. And then somehow just the fact that everybody kept saying his name resulted in his being president. It's really weird. But, you know, also magic, not in a good way, but like it's, you know, when you get everybody saying the same thing, that's powerful, you know.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is indeed.
Things are coming to light. People are, you know, like this, getting rid of the Weinstein guy. People are talking more about the day-to-day, like, shit that women have to go through with, you know, asshole men everywhere. Not that all men are assholes, of course, but a lot of them, like, you know, I'll have like a friend, and then I'll be like, you know, oh yeah, I love so-and-so. And then, like, you know, a girl will come around, and then I'll see like how he interacts with her. I'm like, wow, he's totally socially inept when it comes to relating with the opposite sex, you know. And it's like, well, you know, it's like, well, to me, he's a great guy. We'd have drinks, we'd talk shit, you know, but not to the opposite sex. The whole half of the population of the world has trouble with this guy, you know. But, you know, so it's like, yeah, that whole thing of like, okay, at what point do you call them out, you know, or what point do you say, hey, can we talk about the inherent chauvinism and what you're saying right now? Like, yeah. You know, like I've caused people to like not want to be my friend anymore by pointing stuff like that out.
Yeah, well, it's a hard one, and honestly, like, I mean, my life's pushed me. It pretty much always pushes me more towards a zero tolerance of all of that sort of stuff. As I've got, you know, the older I get, the harder it is to, I mean, that's why a lot of people, you just can't keep around, right?
I think when I was younger, I used to argue, where now I block. I don't think either one is good, but, you know, I block so that I don't argue, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I used to like have to jump on it, and then I'd spend the whole day like worrying about when someone was going to reply to something I forgot that I wrote yesterday. Like that was basically 2000, 2001, you know, when I was like full steam internet asshole for the Order, you know.
Yeah, I guess I do remember. I mean, yeah. I mean, you didn't talk to me for many years. after the schism.
Yeah. Oh,
Even
yeah.
when I
The
was
way
in
that it
LA all
was
the time.
framed, it was all framed, of course, by Voldemort. You know.
Well,
as,
everyone gets demonized. That's normal, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the way that it was put was, you know, like after the two of them left, that it came to you to be imperator, and then the first thing you did, without telling him or without consulting anyone, was close the temple, just because you guys owed money or something.
That's not really very true, is it?
Yeah, that sounds like not a not a complete story.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've you know, we've gone over it. I've written about it. It's all
okay.
written down.
Yeah, people can
read. Yeah, you and I
about
had
it
a
in
whole
the
long
books.
talk with it, and I walked some of the other.
And then I guess you called me when I was in a like blackout drunk, and I told you were an asshole or something, and then I totally have no memory of that.
I have no memory of that. I don't think
Oh,
that actually
okay.
happened. That was
Oh,
someone
it
else.
didn't. Oh, really? I thought that was you.
I think you're in the clear there.
Oh, okay, good. Wow, who was that?
I wasn't, 'cause, you know, I wasn't. That's why I was in LA so much. I traveled pretty much nonstop from the temple ended. I finished. You know, I finished training for the priesthood, finished seminary, and then I moved to Europe for doctoral studies, and then just stayed on the road. I was doing 3 jobs, like along with studying for my PhD, and yeah, I was in the same country for much more than 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
Place here and in Europe, and I was bouncing around. So I would be shocked if you ever had called me at all, but we never ever.
I thought you had called me, and
once when I was in LA, I was out with you know, one of our sorors from the olden days, and she met me at the hotel that the company had put me up at, and we had dinner, and she called you and just urged me to. She was talking to you and she just urged me to say hello, and I said hello, and that was it. You just hung
okay.
up. So, but that was
must have been the one I remember, because I was at
like 2000. Maybe you were drunk then.
2006. Yeah, I was. I was at
late at night. It was late at night. I told her not to call you.
Yeah, I was. I think I was, because I have all these memories of the art walk.
She was never an adept. She never understood how the whole process of like.
Oh yeah, how weird it was.
That Robert put 3 people through. I mean, like he literally gave us lectures on demonizing people. I mean, as you know, like, I mean, he tried to separate me from my own family for years.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't need to get into that again. But that was like, you know,
it was brutal stuff. It was fucked up.
Yeah, there was a reason. You know, I mean, sure, was I his whipping boy because I was being groomed, or you know, who really cares at the end of the day?
Right.
And for me, that was never my spiritual path to even question that, which is why I was able to take it, because, you know, I didn't see it as abuse of power or even physical abuse. I saw it as me going through my alchemy. And sure, is that perhaps a victim mentality? Maybe a little bit. Well, you know, and that definitely relates to my childhood, but these are all things I've learned, of course, since then. That's why I had to take that long break and just sort of let my circle dissolve and find out what was underneath it all, which happens, I think, you start seriously building your circle in your spiritual practice at a young age.
Right.
You know, the whole...
Well, yeah, there's the traditional, you know, more traditionally, you know, in like... non-Hermetic Kabbalah, like in Jewish Kabbalah, from what I understand, they recommend waiting until you're 40, married, your kids are, you know, in school, and you have your money taken care of, your income taken care of, you have your house, then start studying Kabbalah. And there's like, now that I'm going to be 40 in like 10 minutes, I get why, you know, like, because I didn't do any of the things that you're supposed to do, you know, from 16 on, pretty much. I graduated high school barely, and then from there on, I just was at the temple all the time. And it's been good recently to kind of discover that I can reframe all of those years in a way that I can, like, for example, the podcast, the workshop I'm doing right now, like, and then I want to go to Asia so that I have more than just
the workshop.
Oh, what's that?
I wish I was there for the workshop so much.
I'll send you the handouts if you want.
Oh, please.
There's a lot of stuff in there. Nothing you don't know, but just kind of the way that I'm trying to summarize like whole grades in like a 9-page handout, you know.
Hey man, you know, it's all totally, it's all about the presentation and the fucking, I love the pedagogy and hermeneutics of all of it. I mean, that's what I write about in my main professional life, as you know. Yeah, I mean, my big book like is coming out in my main life, so that's actually like, that's why there's not too much esoteric stuff coming out right now, because my big book on ethics is coming out.
Now, one thing,
it's sort of shocking, I guess. I mean, atheistic, naturalistic, and based on ethics and dialogue and politics. But right, I released an introduction to that on the Hermetic spiritualism behind a lot of my ways of interpreting philosophy, the history of philosophy and intellectual thought.
For me, the blind men and the elephant scenario, you know that one? Where they all have a different part of the elephant, and so they're arguing with each other, but they're actually all correct about the elephant. One's describing a tail, one's describing a trunk. I think that atheists, like, they're looking straight into the abyss, or maybe at Ein, and, well, let's get to the point, like, Ein, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but like where someone who's a very dogmatic Christian is looking more at Tiferet, or more at some aspect of Yesod, or maybe somewhere in the astral plane, or, swearing, but then to swear by reason, that's like Hod and Ein, like an atheist who's very reasonable and does everything according to reason. But then what they call a dangerous kind of nihilist or nihilist, I guess, would be someone who is looking straight into the abyss and then operating based on their desire, if the desire hasn't been gone through any processes of purification, or if it's rooted in the lower tendencies and the Yetzir Hara, the evil inclination, and all that.
Yeah.
But then good and evil are just mental constructs, right?
Maybe
a Zoroastrian model borrowed by the Catholic Church, or the post-Babylonian. When was it that the Hebrews started thinking in Zoroastrian terms, or was that just the Catholics?
Oh, well, they've been messing around in that stuff, like back and forth, right? There was a lot of back and forth in those early days. I mean, like, we haven't even talked about the Church of the Hermaphroditical Jesus yet. I mean, that's like first, second century.
Oh,
that's
wow.
like first, second century, man.
Oh, cool.
There were so many statues that had to get defaced. But I want to clarify one thing before we move on to the history of religion again, which is a hobby of all of ours. I really want to talk about the Raelians. That's what I'm really here to talk about. Like, the Raelians, the alien spirits are coming for us. And that's
okay.
Happening.
Nice.
Just like, newsflash.
Cool. That's what that is.
My coffee. When I argue about, when I talk about atheism, I mean one thing and one thing only and that's the rejection of supernatural deity. Okay. So that's why it's a lot of the
natural
work
deity
of people in the philosophical fields that I work in.
Pantheism, not panentheism.
Are focused. Yeah, it's whether you're pantheist or panentheist or whatever. I mean those are highly theological terms, and I'm slightly more in the philosophical theology world, which I know it sounds super pedantic to say, but it's pretty highly significant, especially as we do a lot of our interpretation through not just hermeneutic philosophy or the theory of traditional interpretation, but we use a lot of semiotics and sometimes even dabble in political theory and a lot of psychoanalytic modalities and methodologies, like Jacques Lacan and some of this stuff, looking at the symbolic and imaginary real orders, and that stuff can seem even really Kabbalistic when you look at it, but you can't mistake it for that, and you can't conflate it too generally, otherwise you end up getting into trouble with just the way categorical thinking and the logic of what you're doing. Like, it's easy to place atheism on the tree of life, right? We can say atheists are tree of life, or they're doing this tree of life, or they're stuck
where they're putting people that use the tree of life in the toilet on their diagram.
Maybe they're just like stuck in a tunnel,
and they might be right.
But philosophically, of course, what you then have to consider the fact that you're already theorizing within a symbolic structure, within a pedagogical format, which is the tree of life. And the tree of life is designed to be heuristic and help us educate ourselves spiritually and practically, which is, again, what attracted me to the Hermetic path so much, especially the Golden Dawn, is the fact that it emphasizes the practical Kabbalah, which Masonry, not to mention the fact that they excluded other things like women, and they excluded these things that really are so essential to Kabbalistic practice. I mean, I was first really like I had some Kabbalistic background, but only through Dion Fortune reading and leading up to my Golden Dawn initiation in when I was 15, and then. But in Vienna, I met a Hasidic rabbi at a lecture at an Anthroposophical Society, and he actually then introduced me to Hasidic Kabbalah. He was a Hasidic rabbi, and he was giving lectures on reincarnation. He studied reincarnated Holocaust survivors. This is a big deal in this world. Yeah, and he believes that Jews definitely believe in reincarnation, or Hasidic people ought to believe that. He that's how he chooses to interpret a lot of the scriptures. Yeah. I mean, even the Catholic Church doesn't actually deny it. Their official stance on reincarnation is that, you're sort of hearing no evil, see no evil. The official stance, I don't know if anyone knows this, but is that they don't acknowledge it, nor do they deny it. It's so classically cheesy, but that is the most official thing you'll get.
Yeah, but then the doctrine contradicts it.
Don't believe it. Well, no, it doesn't.
I guess you could interpret it as like at the end of all your lives or something.
Because dogma and doctrine dogma is about how you interpret doctrine and what those interpretations are that are correct. It's not that they're not acknowledging that you could have other interpretations. They're saying that those aren't right. That's what the councils are all about, which interpretations are right and which are wrong. And whether it was for good or for evil, I mean, it's probably a good idea some of the Apocrypha wasn't allowed into mainstream interpretation. But at the same time, they weren't really allowing...
Or the rest of it, for that matter, as we found out when they finally published it, and then we had that Anabaptist cult that popped up in Munster, was it?
There's so many...
Oh my God. Crazy. I mean, and then Martin Luther came out and I think very innocently said that if you don't understand a piece of scripture, you don't have to ask a priest. You can ask the Holy Spirit in prayer, and the Holy Spirit will tell you what it means. And he didn't know what he was saying when he said that, but a lot of people were like, thank you. That's just what I needed. Hello, everybody. Notice my big beard? I am an Old Testament prophet. Now get on your knees.
Yeah, there's all that shit.
Yeah, I mean, still goes on.
there was, yeah. I mean, well, that's one of the reasons when you're studying this stuff, academically and even in seminary, which is just as academic, really. It's just you have to learn the languages too, so it's a little crazier.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I
think
I can tell you this, my understanding of magic has changed since I learned Hebrew and Aramaic. There's just no two ways about that. You can't interpret it the way you interpreted it before after that knowledge is there. Now, it took a lot of work for me to go through and come out the other side, and it took reading people like the successor of Gershon Scholem, Moshe Adel, who really takes Kabbalistic philosophical understanding and brings it into the modern world, which is, post-deconstructionist and post-religious in sort of the way that I'm definitely promoting.
I'm going to edit that out.
Are you going to India soon?
I leave on November 15th.
That's right. You're leaving soon.
Yeah. It's so okay. Check this out. The way that I set it up was I looked at when Sal. He used to be in the Order back in the day. He was on the Esoterinerd once too. He opened up this store and asked if I'd do a workshop. So I looked at my last day at Crunch Fitness teaching yoga was the 6th. And so I saw how many Fridays there were between the 6th and the day that I leave, and it was 5. So I figured, okay, Malkut, Yesod, Hod, Netzach, Tiferet, and then I get on a plane. So every passing Sephirot that I do a workshop on, I'm one step closer to jumping off into South Africa and then Nepal. So that'll be a trip.
That's really amazing.
A trip with a Y and with an I.
Oh, wow. Well, I wish you well. And
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's going to be amazing.
Oh, I wanted to bring up, back in the day, and people, longtime listeners are aware that we came from a group that was big into the Peace in Jerusalem thing at one point after 9/11. And there was a Power Week that year, I believe right Yeah, it was a year later. I'm trying to place when this would have been, because there was 2 power weeks up in Canada at Temple Tahuti, 99
2001.
2001. So the 2001 Power Week, we had already been doing Peace in Jerusalem for almost a year, and there was a very special ritual. Do you know the one I'm referring to that you led?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, well, yeah.
In a way, that was an answer to a lot of people's questions, like, why Jerusalem? And then, of course, the answer was, well, because we're actually a bunch of closet Christians and we think Jerusalem's the center of the world, was the real answer. But
the Peace in Jerusalem ritual one, actually, I got exposed to at the first Power Week I was at, like the one in
the Outer Order one.
The very first one, that I flew to right after.
Oh,
Vienna.
with the pink roses and stuff. Was it that one where the whole world's
I'm not sure.
covered in green? And...
No, I don't think that was that. I don't think that was it. I still have the document, that the original one I was handed out for the ceremony, and that was the one I based the ritual
Ulster.
using Yeats's Order of Celtic Mysteries instead of the Hebrew mysteries.
And that included the LBRP divine names, right?
Yeah.
And the middle pillar.
So we put all that into the Celtic mysteries stuff, and that was like, it was a big deal to get permission to do that, and then we performed that. In Vancouver in '99.
That was a trip.
Which was definitely a very powerful trip, and it was after that started bringing more and more of sort of the Celtic mysteries stuff and the research I had done, and was continued to do for years, for 5, 6 years, 7 years, all the way up through partial stuff that I would still look at that stuff doing doctoral research in Ireland, but not so much then. I'd already written that first book, and that did a lot.
So have you written a book about the Irish, about that work, the Yeats work?
Just the Yeats study.
Okay.
And I won't get into that too much, because that's already that's almost 20 years old. That's like 20 years old. But a new version will come out of that, and then I'll pimp that when it's time. But right now, I'd rather focus on just like the stuff that's out, that's new and fresh, and especially the Halloween spirit is my favorite energy of the year, and it's really, I definitely would love to dwell in that more with you.
Just real quick on that, before we move on to that, I wanted to mention that there was one time in particular that basically when I was leading orientations and people would come and say, I personally, I'm not into Christian stuff at all. And the Jewish stuff, it's nice and all, but it's not for me. I'm into Celtic stuff. And I would immediately tell them about the Ritual for Peace in Ulster and Yeats and the research that you did. And in one particular case, she joined. And went through several of the grades, didn't make it all the way into the second, but then later she was my accountant. So that's interesting.
Oh, wow.
But okay, so Azrael, so people can go to Amazon and write in Frater RC Azrael. That's Azrael.
That's it. Yeah, and
cool.
You can get the invocation. So there's 2 scripts up, which is one's the invocation, and one's the ceremony that blends in some of the Celtic mysteries along with it. And they're there. Okay, the ceremony one, I was able to set it for free for the 26th. So from midnight tonight till the next night, it'll be free, and you can skim through it for free for the first 3 months. And that's just a perk you can get when you have something exclusively to Kindle. Mm-hmm. But it fails to cast a wider net. So once I put things on other sites, then you can't have those free perks and the unlimited reading anymore.
Yeah.
Money-wise, it doesn't really make much of a difference which way you do it. So it's just sort of accessibility. And for me, the goal is, if you're going to release stuff, let it be accessible. And that's sort of the way things have gone now. It's like secrecy is. The social and political reasons we need secrecy are almost dead and gone these days.
And yet intellectual copyright is like the bread and butter of so many artists and writers and people, actors, even the whole entertainment industry. The movement toward transparency seems to also include unlimited access to whatever media exists.
Well, yeah, we can really basically blame Survivor for all of this.
Survivor, the That show?
Reality TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, your reality TV. No, it just sparked something that was already there. I don't know. And again, I'm not an opponent of transparency. I'm not.
Well, it's like one of those double letters.
I never really was.
The double letters, riches and poverty. Like, I'm against poverty. You know, it's like I'm against war. I'm pro peace. You know, it's like which side of the double letters do you stand on? You know,
I'm more for protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And so whatever you need to do to protect yourself or put up whatever level of veil or blind or whatever green language is necessary to give yourself safety and protection is a fair thing. And that sort of falls under the fourth principle of the occultist, which is to be silent, right? Our manifestations, our will, our creations never really come to fruition if we don't have that silence, that seal on the alembic. And so that's why I like the magical mottos for that reason. I like some of the respect. I mean, secrecy is a old-fashioned word almost. I mean, in this day and age, the word respect might start to be well advised to come into use again.
You can see it active in the entertainment industry again. Like as an example, everyone involved, all the actors and stuff have to take a vow of secrecy. Basically, like they'll be ruined and they get threatened to be fined for $5 million if they even take a selfie, with the set, in the background. And all in order to have this magical experience where everybody gets to sit down and see Westworld and not know what happened, or whatever. And so it's sort of like a form of that kind of magic in everyday use.
Yeah, right now I'm basically releasing the documents as I unpack them because everything's just temporarily unpacked, and especially unpacking the rest since there was the robbery and had like a lot of stuff taken.
Oh my God, that sucks.
Yeah, like my true copy of the True and Faithful Relation, like the big old first edition hardcover magical child one. No, but it was pretty obvious that was worth something, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, unpacking documents, uploading them as I can, and basically preparing things, including order websites and stuff so that they can, because I don't know what's going to happen in my life in the next 6 months. I don't know, like I have surgeries that I'm going to be having. I don't know how they're going to go or when they're going to happen. And I just want everything sort of, ducks in a row. Yeah. And, this phase of my life is definitely about a different form of the great work than the other phases have been. There's sort of the classic three. You do the training and then you go practice in the world and then you sort of give back, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'll do after that. We'll sort of see. Well, if I'm alive in 6 months, I can revise my plans. But
yeah.
What's your question?
Do you mind if I call the episode VH Frater RC?
No, that's great. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. I was going to mention that, of course, very honored just sounds inherently like if to introduce oneself as very honored Frater is the most arrogant thing that someone outside of actual Victorian England. No, of course we don't do that. But originally,
that's not part of the etiquette.
Originally, and I wanted to kind of clarify this for the longtime listeners. In the very first episode, you can kind of hear a certain affection in my voice where I'm being very, very overly haughty and only certain people would get this reference and saying I am very honored Frater, and then I kind of hail back to that just in the very beginning of every episode when I say welcome to very honored Frater, but I wanted people to know that there's a level of irony there. That I'm aware that the title "Very Honored" is sort of absurdly hierarchical in its, but if people listen to the whole podcast, they can see that I've kind of torn all of that stuff apart, and I'm not actually, people who are from the Golden Dawn background. It lets them know where I'm coming from, or people who are hardcore studiers of Crowley are aware, or Paul Foster Case are aware that they had names that was VH Frater something, and. So
well, I don't
think
you need to explain it at all. I think it's clear, and the contrast. I love the contrast between the affected pomposity of the introduction with the casual, chit chat, chatty, swearing, cussing, honest nature of the show. I mean, that's part of what all of what you do is. I mean, even the name of your podcast is a is a mockery of
that's
the
true.
solemnity of the days of old.
So they go together. VH Frater's Esoterinerd.
It also evokes images of, you know, armchair magicians and people who are counting how many copies of the exact same edition of the exact same book of whatever they have.
Oh, you have the second edition? I have the first edition.
Yeah, exactly. That's I mean, and let's face it, the reason is because we keep failing everybody. You know, we can't hold temples together. We get, as soon as you get a group of adepts at a certain size, you know, things happen. People get fucking abusive and power plays come into form and all of that stuff. And so, you know, members, I was just talking to a member today who I met on Instagram, and, you know, they were literally initiated in 2012 by very honored, greatly honored Frater. And then everything, you know, then he was, next thing you knew, that he was gone, and there was no more guidance, and hasn't been able to find any education since then. And people, of course, turn to armchair magic and try to rewrite ceremonies themselves or replicate the experiences that we were so lucky to have. And that was one of the most serious things that was drilled into me throughout the portal probationary period for the Second Order, you know, and I had one of the severest teachers in history, probably. You know, God bless him. We're still sort of friends, so whatever. But like that was our duty. Like, you know, this wasn't a joke. We didn't just hang out, talk about magic, and go for drinks after.
Yeah,
that makes me think of another thing I read earlier today by an occult author. About joining at 15 or 16 or 17 and why you can't. And the reason was bad, but, you know, perhaps there could be good reasons, but his wasn't. His was around drinking. But no,
Well, I think in a world where you can actually be a working tarot reader and have that be what you do for your profession, it's a little different than 130 years ago, where that only the wandering gypsies did that. I should apologize to any Roma people for using the derogatory. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's I can almost spot that. We're so West Coast and aware.
RC's in I'm in LA and Los Angeles for anybody listening.
You can bleep my city name later.
Oh, okay. But it's
whatever.
West Coast and somewhere in Canada on the West Coast.
That's right. Like, yeah, it's not really a mystery.
One of those fishing villages.
But no, let's stay on the point because it's an interesting point, and that I'm glad to talk about it. You know, and like this is like we're fucking adepts, right? We're here to serve, and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right.
Right.
Because especially since the theme of this year was January, with me being approached about a freaking massive schism caused by my ex-best friend and protege, who God knows I'm slightly responsible for the creation of this little monster. And, you know, these people, I'm still in touch with these people, and people contact me, and their lives are ruined.
Oh, no.
Like, their lives are ruined. So, like, all I hear about any of this, like, I don't have any... I've fought to stay out of it mostly, but I still hear from people who are traumatized, and you know, hearing from this you know, brother of ours just on Instagram today, who's still looking to continue his studies after going through only 2 grades and not really wanting to keep doing the astral thing, which God only knows is understandable. I mean, I had amazing astral experiences and physical experiences. Lucky me. But for most people, I mean, you're going to need some physical presence at some point, because that's how these things are actually conveyed from mouth to ear. They're not done from keyboard through, you know, brainwave or internet wave.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. And I spent years of my life devoted to studying the mysteries and practicing magic before I had any chance of encountering it to the level, like, it was just night and day, right? Like what we were doing and what we learned and
what
how
we
we
took for granted day to day. Yeah.
You know, like, you know,
that environment, that social, like being able to do rituals and walk out of the temple and see a whole bunch of other people also wearing black robes going, oh, we heard you doing the such and such in there. It sounded good. I mean, that's totally like, yeah, that's a unique.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was more the power. It was the power of the work we were doing. I mean, it was on another level than anything I had encountered through anything else, and still is to this day. And I've seen a lot of different things, and I just think that people who want to learn any magical system can be that powerful. I'm positive.
Yeah.
And think we need. I think it's just a shame that we're not doing more to create these in functional forms. I mean, God knows it's hard. I mean, look at what the churches have had to go through, and every other organized form of a religion. I mean, they've become practically corporate structures and borderline empires and little mini kingdoms, just so that they can celebrate the mysteries or try their best to help people, guide people in their spiritual purpose and path in life. And people, that's all people want. I mean, if they want something else, they shouldn't come to an order.
Yeah. For me, when I was 18, they made me a teacher, and then I was barely a student from that point on. Like, Voldemort and a couple other people were my only teachers, and barely.
Well, you and me, like we went through that, right?
Yeah.
We were this cadre, you, me, and.
But then, for me, at 34 was when I stopped. And then because I was used to being a teacher, partly because I was used to being a teacher, I became a yoga teacher. And so I've still been teaching, but now I stopped teaching this. I'm teaching in South Africa. That's my last teaching thing. And then once I arrive in Nepal, then I'll be student again. So for me, it's like, I feel like I owe it to my own, what I have to offer people, because I've taught everything I have to teach over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And so I want to put that on pause long enough to go like really learn and have some beautiful experiences that aren't in a warehouse in the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Meet some other teachers besides that handful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I got a good dose of after, in my years of seminary. Because it was interesting to I started mainstream seminary at the same time I went into the second order, so I did them parallel. Of course, balancing them was a trick. Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting. We got to really well acquainted with. I specialized in Jewish Christian dialogue and relations stuff. But yeah, we got to experience imams and you got to travel and experience the world. I mean, yeah, that's just. I mean, the book The Zealot.
Just been right here,
The Zealot has a good description of that. I was hoping to do the Camino at some point in the next couple years.
What's the Camino?
The Camino de Santiago. It's the pilgrim's path to where St. John went to the sea on the coast of Spain, and Santiago de Compostela.
Nice.
Paulo Coelho wrote his book The Pilgrimage, based on his experience of doing that with one of his teachers.
How cool.
Not sure how fictionalized it is, though. I read the book. It was an interesting experience, actually. No, I'm one of the weirdos that actually enjoyed Zanoni. Yeah, I ate that up. It was I don't know, maybe it was my love of grammar and linguistics that made me find those style of writing and atrociously absurd grammar just to be sort of like a caricature or a joke, and I got through it. I know most people, it's hailed as perhaps being the most unreadable book written in English. Other critics, famous critics, have called it the worst novel ever. Yet, of course, it's one of the mandatory readings that we had for the second order, because I don't know, maybe it's like a demonstration of the bottom rung that you can pass to write grade material.
Interesting.
Because some grade material is pretty badly written. I'm just taking a cheap blow because it's fun too. But no, I mean, not everyone's a writer, and some people need to get information out even when they're not a writer.
Yeah.
And that's totally fair. I mean, it's hard to complain with what's happened to the internet and grammar these days.
Yeah, I've been working with people who...
It's fascinating.
And sometimes English is someone's fifth language, so it's okay, clearly this person has a lot to offer. They've been studying, they've gone to school, they've read books in multiple languages, and so I should listen even though they're not good at conjugating, But we're programmed to assume that people are ignorant if they don't know how to put together a perfect English sentence every time,
Yeah, then that's a mistake, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, one of those that us left coasters, west coasters can learn to see beyond.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good. I mean, there's some languages I've found where if you don't say things flawlessly, they look at you like. I mean, French is like that. Sometimes German can be like that. And German
They're
can be
just
like
speak
that.
English. We all speak English.
I'd be like, yeah, I would often sometimes find in the early days that they could be a bit kinder with German. But then there's languages like Irish. Like I can put together words in Irish in almost any order, like almost like Latin syntax, and they don't mind. They will always understand what you mean, even if it's very, very tangential and touching. And there's a old saying in Irish, or relatively old saying, that broken Irish is better than perfect English. And that's just because they have a culture of reclaiming that language.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like Aramaic probably the best of the languages that I know. Italian is definitely next on my list to start learning.
Yeah, I'm going to be learning Nepalese for a little while.
Dear Lord. That's a report.
Well, that's, I'm going to be there for 90 days, so I figure I'll do the full immersion. I haven't even really started getting into it. I wrote down the letters, but when I'm there, I'm sure by necessity I'll start to be like, oh, that's the word for food. Oh, that's the word for restaurant. But I think they have a lot of stuff in English too, unfortunately. So you might have to work at it a little bit.
Yeah.
Or go out to the villages away from Kathmandu.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd come back to Gnosticism at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not sure if we can. I mean, we lost that beautiful tangent on, me going into academic stuff. Not that that's not a bad thing, but, a lot of this, I'm so glad I wrote the autobiography, because seriously, if I had to actually, start talking about that stuff, you guys can, and, just go buy it and read it if you really want to hear the story. It's sort of I don't know. Dear God. Yeah. Life is, my life's been fucking insane,
roller
as you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how many lives I've lived or how many I've left. But hey, that is the path of the chameleon, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when
trying to be all things to all people.
When I decided I wanted to be a yoga person, I went down to Hollywood Boulevard and walked around until I smelled incense. And I went inside and heard the music and said, "What is this?" And they said, "Buddha Bar." So I downloaded all the Buddha Bar, and I bought this weird pink shirt and these white pants, shaved my head, and then showed up for my yoga training. And everybody's looking at me like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And but it was just, that was my attempt at I just wanted an abrupt change. I am no longer the person I was before, and then now I look more like I used to. But it's part of that chameleon thing, changing the colors, changing the shape.
That's part of it, though, right? I mean, you can just sort of follow the path.
Well, it's you learn that you're all 12 signs, so it's I can be a Pisces and be totally intuitive and see symbols and see meanings behind things, and then I can step over and be a Virgo and be like, that's totally irrational, it's probably like this. But then that can get out of hand, and I can talk myself into all kinds of fear scenarios, and then I have to go back to the intuitive side to be like, okay, all of this is bullshit except for this. So that's, I guess, what it means to have gone through the processes we've been through, is all those squares on the vault wall are accessible to us, where a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm just water. I'm not one of those air people or earth people or fire people. I'm just water, or I'm just air. I'm not into that fire or earth.
Yeah, well, New Ageism.
Yeah.
That's the downside of it, sort of.
Or even mundanism. I'm a doctor, not a lawyer. I'm a barista, not a ballet dancer. We know that we could be a barista and a ballet dancer and a judge and a priest and a king. It's just a matter of what we decide to put on that day. I was reflecting on the neophyte, because I used to, you know me, I've been through some phases. I kind of had to be like...
Well, that's sort of the theme of all of this, right? That's the child of the great transformers is all about I mean, people. When you talk about how we all go through phases, the first thing I thought about was how we actually get stuck in phases.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually in a way more interesting. Is the transformation of being stuck in a phase going into a new phase? To me, that's where there's crisis. That's where there's trauma and therefore transformation.
Well, what happened for me was my focus was on the hierarchy and the initiations and the assumption that the neophyte coming in and stuff where we work on in Z formula, that it assumes that they're basically a dead brick, and that we've got to bring it to life with water, and then we've got to consecrate it to the path with incense. And then from that point on, their spiritual instruction comes from the people sitting in those robes. And so that's what I was seeing. I was focusing a lot on that and how I didn't like it. But then just yesterday, actually, I was thinking about the words, that the veil has been put over your eyes, like the hoodwink is keeping you from seeing the infinite love and joy and beauty that's there, but you can't see it because someone put a hoodwink on you, which is why you've come in here blindly seeking out advice and knowledge. So it's kind of like, because if you look at it in that way, then it's right on. So like the people because there's a lot of people that in the name of maintaining the structure of their respective organizations or their mental conditioning or syncretizing the Golden Dawn with Catholicism or something, they'll really get into the whole don't mistake the great tree for the small tree, and at the expense of all other teachings. Like it's we're talking about the big tree, not your little tree, because really there's only God. That God expresses himself as many selves, but that you're the little self. Don't you mistake yourself for God. And it's like, why just keep running that tape over and over? Like it just seems like, okay, that's something that could be kept in mind. But I mean, right at the beginning of the neophyte, it says that infinite, where your soul used to wander infinitely and had access to everything and was able to perceive all beauty, and the illusion of mortality and the illusion of limitations have been placed over your eyes, according to the officers in the ceremony. But they don't bother to check with the neophyte to find out if that's necessarily true in that particular case, because they might have had a good acid trip once in the desert and the veil was lifted. And so they're coming in and they're being told this and they're like, no, you might be talking about the guy next to me, but anyway, what's next, And then they're being told, don't mistake the big tree for the small tree. And they're like, okay, you know what? I already did Christianity. I'm out of here, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course I understand what you mean. Yeah. I mean, syncretism, exclusivism, inclusivism, the different models of God. I found we got very confused. I think often in occult circles we get very confused about these different models because we often learn about them in terms of practical Kabbalah. We learn about them in terms of the application for ritual or for for spiritual transformation, for theurgy, for thaumaturgy. We learn about them in the context of using them practically, and sometimes you can skip over what they actually are. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Like I read this in a book. Let's use it in a ritual, like without actually like spending a week like contemplating it or researching where it came from or something.
Yeah, and also people can end up attributing too much to something, like too much existence to it, right? I mean, that's one of the things I like about chaos magic is you don't
I caught that.
you don't overestimate the existence of something, and that's part of the movement of anti-supernaturalism and anti-Platonism, because the idea of these sort of supernatural cosmic ideas or existences that are outside of nature is ultimately harmful to our understanding of ourselves and our relationship to the world around us.
And but I mean, it gets weird when someone who is like bona fide, maybe undiagnosed schizophrenic gets involved in the mysteries, and then you're like, wow, are you lying or are you serious? Like, are you pathological liar or schizophrenic?
Yeah, I had that exact question to a friend in the order long before we even I had ever encountered that illness. So it was that was a very big actually transformation in my life.
Yeah.
Was discovering one of my best friends was dealing with that exact situation, and his breaking the ending of his relationship to in philosophy was traumatic for a lot of people and very, very, very difficult. And he had a lot of struggles thereafter, but now he's doing extremely well. And
oh, good.
I'm very, and he's an amazing person. So I'm really glad he's rocking and rolling in life as the best as anyone can.
Yeah. I knew someone who got deeply involved in some weird Enochian work and then had a son, and then the voices started telling him that he needed to take his son up to a mountain and sacrifice him. And it's like, okay, well, clearly this is derivative. But I mean, if somebody really believes that this is what angels would say to a person because they're familiar with Scripture, what do you do? You know, but they ended up taking his kid away because he was so freaked out about it.
Yeah, you gotta love the whole sola scriptura thing. Yeah, biblical authority. Well, that's what I was sort of saying before. Is like, you know, when you start looking at the different when a practical belief, an element of any form of spiritual practice becomes something technical, and then you sort of aggrandize it and attribute to it supernatural status by not placing it in the actual context that it should be seen, by not looking at it in relationship to other, whether they're ideological modes. Like, there's a very big difference between how elements are placed in different magical orders, in different systems, whether it's different pagan, neo-pagan systems or hermetic or otherwise. Like, there's so much out there. The Haitians have another whole cosmology in voodoo, right? And as soon as we don't place each of the systems alongside each other, we can get lost thinking this is the system, this is the only, and then, you know, that's when you start totalizing and commit the fallacy of tyranny, which is what, you know, taking your own belief and your own idea and putting it over top of what someone else's is. And, you know, from that you can strew a lot of really flawed sort of ethical points of view, not to mention with political and moral ramifications that really, you know, is what leads to our fights, the fighting in the occult communities and between members and stuff. I mean, there's the squabbles
of small differences.
Side, yeah, exactly, and that's what, you know, I guess I sort of started to poke my head up a bit when I saw what you were doing, and when I saw that there was other movement from groups that were authentic seekers and, you know, interested in this work, and that it was, yeah, you know, some of the bullshit was being dropped. I mean, like, you know, because we come from the days of the lawsuits and like the copyright wars and all that stuff that was just so counterproductive, not to mention, like, you know, abusive of everyone involved, and you know, ruined a lot of people's lives and ruined families and relationships and jobs and careers. And, you know, a lot of people are dead now. You know, not because of that. Like, you know, cultists, I don't think get too violent. That's only in the movies, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, what was that, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, well, I was a big fan of the book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know,
I'm more into movies. It's the difference between Canada and California, if anybody's wondering.
Yeah, maybe. That's an amazing piece of writing. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's very helpful to look at things like Gnosticism and all the other religious structures, all in a categorical framework that allows you to see that they are just categories. I mean, and they don't contain a metaphysical super narrative that spans the universe and that everything participates in, like classical Platonism and Neoplatonism promotes. And that is sort of the grounds out of which Gnosticism bloomed, or, you know, maybe influenced proto-Gnosticism, maybe influenced that before that, but who knows? I mean, it all goes back to stuff that we have lost track of in the early astrology and religion of Babylon and Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
I mean, Egypt is late by comparison, right? Compared to all some of the older stuff, and where we know a lot of the early rituals and magics come from. I mean, a lot of my university work was reading and translating first and second century Aramaic scroll writings that were spells.
Interesting.
And these were things that I had access to in the university, and they've just never been translated. I mean, just no one gives a fuck.
Wow.
Like there's like so much of this stuff out there. There's tons of it, and oh my god, the lengths of the list of angels that people might call to as they walk from their friend's house to home again. Like it would have taken the entire trip, but I guess if they didn't have their phones to look at, what else would they do except whisper angel names in the middle of the dark? And it's crazy also the names that slipped in there that were demon names, looked like demon names or are similar, and a lot of variants of names that we have commonly or popularly today. I mean, when you look at the history of Kabbalah, the names of angels, the transformation of the tree of life changes so much. We act like the tree of life from the Golden Dawn that Kraut used is the one tree of life. But if you look at the older Jewish scholars and the old Reshis,
it's the way the material's written.
So many different forms.
This is the diagram of God. Yeah.
And that's because the entire thing is, like Dion Fortune said, a synthetic system. And it's ultimately syncretistic, and makes that's seductive because it can lead us to easily and roughly equivocate all things to be equal and conflate different cultures' gods onto the Sephira like willy-nilly or without much justification, which was again what my Yeats Celtic Mysteries work was on, was looking at slightly more rigorous justifications, though the methodology was still extremely modernist and structuralist, and I'm not really, I think it could have been a bit more deconstructionist, but that was because I hadn't read Moshe Adel yet, and Moshe Adel hadn't really become Moshe Adel yet, and he's the ultimate Jewish Kabbalah scholar in the world. He's just the genius, and really, hard to describe. Just sort of reading. His big book is called Absorbing Perfections.
Okay, I'll put that on my list for sure.
It's a crazy title, hey. Yeah. Anyway, he's the successor for Gershon Scholem.
Okay.
A Jewish scholar. Anyway, it's dangerous. It's seductive when we start placing everything on the tree of life, and
because it's like the presumption that the tree of life is the true, the most true way, and that everything else, that has manifested has been like some version of it or other. So it's just a matter of being able to piece it onto the tree of life because it's so universal. It's like sort of like Catholicism. Catholic means universal. They were like, oh, well, we'll make a religion that everybody will like. This will work for everyone.
Yeah, it's designed as an educational tool to help you transform yourself spiritually, and you need to move up the ladder, and that's what it's about, in my opinion. And it's hard to get that message when you're just reading books and not talking about it casually with people like we are here, and that's why I value this podcast that you've created, because it's a chance for people to hear how we actually would discuss these things in real life, because real life is never as glamorous as we imagine from fantasy, of course, but that is how Kabbalah actually exists, and it's while you're talking about these things and bringing your own life into it. This is exactly what Hasidic and ancient Kabbalistic rabbis would do, is they would sit around and they would get a little bit tipsy, right, with a traditional glass of brandy or whatever, and they would dialogue, they would argue, they would debate, they would do math. Right? It's like it's a geek's dream. I know, right? And
Esoterinerd.
That's definitely very apropos of the title, and I think that's a great thing that needs. I don't know how we can offer that more in this new digital sort of era, where it's harder to get. From my understanding of what I've heard this year, sort of coming back out of the darkness. It's hard to get members. It's like apparently everyone just loves the OTO.
Well, it's more popular with the Age of Aquarian types, but I think what it is that orders with hierarchies and a chief adept are a Piscean era thing, Piscean age. And as we move into the Age of Aquarius, like for example, right now, there's Naha Armadi, I think is how you pronounce her last name, at the House of Intuition in Silver Lake. Every month she does a middle pillar ritual where people come in and they all lay down, and she does this long guided middle pillar for them. And meanwhile, up in Burbank, I'm teaching the Path of the Flaming Sword at a place called the Crooked Path. But it's specifically, and Naha and I have this in common, we're aware that these teachings for a long time were taught in a context with a lot of Kool-Aid or with a lot of oaths of secrecy and all of this stuff. And ego gets into, whether it's veiled as humility or not, it gets into the teaching process, or I'm 4 grades beyond you, so of course I have a much deeper understanding of these things than you, neophyte. Like getting rid of that, and just saying, okay, everybody here's a human being. Congratulations. Now let's learn about this. This is interesting. It came from here. And then people can use it, and it more deeply informs their relationship with tarot.
The pomposity.
Yeah, exactly.
The tradition, we have enough of it. We have was it Agrippa? No, it was it was Paracelsus. He actually, the word bombastic pretty much, I think, doesn't it actually come from his name?
I don't know.
Or he just adopted, he just throws that in there. Theophrastus Paracelsus Bombastus from Hohenheim. From the High Town. High Town, because they were high, presumably, the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it used to be you had to have a castle if you were going to get into this crazy stuff, because otherwise you're going to be more concerned about, the harvest or something, hence the differentiation between pagan and people who live in the city back in the Roman times.
Yeah.
Paganus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I miss Donald Michael Craig.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Yeah, that's where that argument's most famous from, and God bless him, man. What a guy. He gave a lot of his life and time to going around, actually going around and giving classes, not just,
Yeah.
Oh, that's what, I don't know, that's just where I'm at these days. This stuff should be accessible to people are so lost spiritually, and, we have a culture that's just doing a lot of messed up things to people, isolating them, not bringing them together, turning them our spirituality into, greed and consumerism. At first I was worried about I saw the online or Instagram tarot readers or spellcasters, and I was worried about simony on the rise. But really, I'm not sure I would ever do magic for money for someone, but.
Yeah, we had a particular brainwashing though.
It's just an interesting change to see from people, promoted. There was you could be killed for this sort of spirituality for a lot of history, and it's nice to see people actually just be like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
who cares? And just no one takes notice of it. You can't get people's attention with your spirituality if you yell it in their face.
Yeah,
if you tried street preaching, and certainly around where I live, people would just think it's an art performance project. In fact, we did it in seminary as an art performance project. We did as a project for our Old Testamental studies, older testamental studies. Yeah, it's not proper anymore to call it the Old Testament. You have to call it Older Testamental.
Interesting.
Yeah, or the Hebrew Bible. And that's actually been the case for 50 years, but there's a 50-year lag time between the academia and the churches, and
the
another 50
hasn't caught up.
Another 50 years between the churches and their congregations.
Yeah.
Curious to hear your thoughts on accessibility of teachings. And
I was thinking Don Michael Craig. I don't think it's a huge secret. He's an adept with Chick Cicero's order.
Or was.
Did he leave?
He passed away from cancer.
Oh, right. Yeah. He died an adept in Chick Cicero's order.
Yes.
And there's a few other people.
The frater I was talking to today was expressing an interest in getting in touch with Cicero, and of course I would sway him to some of the affiliate, of course Yeshi's order.
So just to clarify for everyone, there's Yeshe, Yeshe, the word for wisdom in Tibet, and it's a name. Yeshe Tsogil was the mother of Tibetan Buddhism. I have a whole podcast for that. And then there's Yeshe, Frater Yeshe, very honored, greatly honored, some kind of honored Frater Yeshe up in
we were talking
Canada.
About this before. Greatly honored is generally a term you apply to someone you recognize as the chief of an order, but it's never self-applied.
Oh,
or
okay.
or except self-applied. Traditionally self-applied in certain ceremonial roles. I mean, he would actually be the one to talk to about the history of this. That either, Ellic Howe or someone
Yeah.
like that. I mean,
Yeah, I
these
had him
guys-
on here. He talked for a while.
You did, yeah, that's right. You talked to. Jeez, yeah. I'll have to go listen to that. We sort of, yeah. That was I was during doctoral studies with Nicholas. He was not so much a GD guy, so we didn't really talk about that much. We talked more about like the role of Italian Renaissance bleeding through that into the the Anglican Church and Evelyn Underhill
Right.
and stuff like that. That's what I was looking at. So I lost track of a lot of my. I have lost a lot of my good old GD history and fun facts. Though I know a lot about what's going on in chaos magic, and I've always been a fan of Austin Osman Spare, of course. Have you ever gotten into Austin Osman Spare?
No.
Yeah, no, I think it's been well, that's the thing, like a lot of the parts of religion and Kabbalah that I had a problem with, or of our orders even, was a lot of the like equating medieval cosmology and sometimes like superstition with the teachings. Like the practical spirituality and the prayer and stuff shouldn't have been equated so strongly with
Right.
the moralism of, say, the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
or some of the politics or cosmology of certain religious views. Like that was just absolutely absurd, and it's against the vow. But like, I mean, that's pretty common in ours. When I was brought into Freemasonry, I was last minute had to take a vow on a British flag, which they knew I had every objection to, and only afterward did I find out I could have actually been initiated into a Masonic lodge that's still with them, but with a different flag. But they concealed that information from me
Interesting.
until the moment where I had to do it, and that I don't respect that stuff. So
Yeah.
I didn't respect it in our order, though. Honestly, it really came out more at the end, as far as I was concerned, especially given how different the culture was up here, and we were much more focused on practice and just hard, that northern mentality of just stay inside, stay in the temple, and do the work.
Yeah, it was very
all the
cold.
time. yeah, we loved our having such a massive temple and such a large membership, and yeah, we didn't go out for drinks after rituals because our rituals didn't end until it was maybe breakfast time.
Yeah.
And then we would have breakfast, sleep for 15 minutes, and get back to it.
Yeah,
Or
we'd go out
getting
to
up.
Spires.
Yeah, I miss those days, though.
It was just like a random diner.
4 a.m. Oh, I have photos of you and me and TDL at Spires in like 99. I have
cool.
a bunch of crazy ones. Like, did you see the one of you and the Nemesis playing the ukulele?
No.
I think you were like 19 at the time.
There's one of you and I and Ireland, and you remember him?
Yeah, I have lots of photos of these guys as well. Yeah, I saw CC last in 2009, right before I left Ireland.
Nice.
Yeah.
How cool.
Had breakfast with him Christmas Day, and then I went back up to hang with my OTO girlfriend in her Oasis. I know, I got to live in an OTO Oasis. So when I was 10 years old, my mom took us away from my dad and moved us into an OTO Oasis in our city.
Really? Oh my God, I didn't know about that.
North Vancouver. And we lived in this massive white mansion in this OTO Oasis. And like, that's where I got my first book. I inherited from him, the guy who ran it. My mom had a cafe that she owned with the guy and this OTO adept, and there was all these rooms in the house I wasn't allowed to go into. I was like 10, right? And they owned a cafe called Spirals on Lower Lonsdale, and it was all black painted and very sort of gothy but sort of chic, and that's where they would clear out and do all their rituals every night.
Wow.
Yeah, right. I didn't know about this till years later, of course. Well, 3 years later when 2 years later we joined. I had a copy signed by all these OTO adepts of the Tree of Life was, put in my things, I guess, or found.
Regardie's Tree of Life?
Yeah, the Regardie's Tree of Life. And
nice.
Yeah, that was that's where I learned the LBRP for the first time. And after that, we all joined Amorc.
Wow.
And, from there I got into Wicca and Druidism and, eventually the Golden Dawn.
So did you find a flyer?
Yeah, eventually. But you want to hear the real irony of everything?
Huh.
That OTO house was
Uh-huh.
next door to this other mansion, and that was the childhood home and where I met.
Oh, what a trip! So he was like, "Oh, I remember those crazy neighbors."
Well, no, I had actually met him the night before we moved into the house. He was brought over to my house because we were both sort of geek kids who had no friends, and my parents were just neighbors. He was randomly brought over to the house by my dad's best friend, and we all
bleep out his name, of course.
The very next day, my mom moves us into this new place, like picks us up from my dad's house, and moves us into the OTO Oasis, and right next to him by chance, like by sheer chance. I mean, and that's where, of course, the temple moved to during the schism, which, he caused back in 2004, and which he caused again this year, which is why there's this huge upset again and stuff, and all these people are like students, like neophytes and zealots.
Oh, it was him. I was thinking of someone else.
No, it's like, so, like, it just sucks, man, like, to see all these, like, can you imagine just getting into something as exciting as your education in the Hermetic orders and through going through the grades and trusting your mentors and ready to learn the mysteries and like do serious work on yourself, and all of a sudden all these older senior members are like bitching about politics and all this tedious petty stuff. Like, that's just
the last generation of portals at Temple of Isis had a real hard time with that.
It's so disgusting, man. It's the same reason, like, I don't work for the church anymore, and it's the reason I'm gonna keep my distance for the rest, whatever's left of my life.
Wow.
But I'm still going to do the work that I know what I'm called to do. So I'm going to.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's Gordon,
setting up certain things so that certain teachings and certain connections for students will be clear and free of people like David Griffin's and those sort of narcissistic cult leader type personalities of the world. Yeah. Beware people.
Yeah, I mean, one day, I mean, hopefully, I mean, gosh.
Or robes and jewelry, or who owns libraries.
Yeah, because if people Google Golden Dawn, they get two things. They get these, they get Chick Cicero eventually, but like they'll get EOGD, they'll get David Griffin, and they'll get, the Greek Nazis. And, so it's like,
God,
where's Thuban order?
Remember that we got to talk about that one prophecy that prophesied the Greek Nazis and the current political...
Really?
Like, it was in contact work. It was like our third order work where it was revealed that one of the few times we did it, and I think we should speak about it now. I mean, we literally were told that the name of our order would become the name of an evil organization, and we were also literally told that the name of even the Mother Goddess would become a name of hatred and terror.
Wow! Was that you guys up in Canada got that?
My diary. This was down at ISIS in LA in the 90s.
How crazy! I'm just wondering the nature of the contact. Was it like on the Ouija board, or
that was mask work?
That was masks.
I don't think it was the time though that we got to do them, that was crazy.
That corpus. Joe was there.
Yeah, Joe was there. We should end with Joe. I miss Joe. Joe is like one of the best human beings I ever met. He was put through hell, of course, for his sexuality by some people. Because, even now it was way less enlightened times back then, and it wasn't that long ago. Things aren't that much today. I mean, fuck. He fought very hard to change, to just transcend everyone around him's bullshit and transform them through his own strength of character.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking about the duality of fertility and solitude, and how when you look at it and think about it long enough, what it implies, that the opposite of fertility is solitude. So it implies, and it's like, okay, so this implies a female in a heterosexual relationship, someone who is either fertile or no one's gonna want them. I mean, it's nice to be able to like put it on a higher level, like a loftier level, and say, well, it's the Empress path or something. But I don't know. It's just one of those like thorn in the. You know what I mean? Like how Lilith is presented in the Golden Dawn versus how people know of her in popular society. It's just interesting. I don't have any solutions. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No.
It's interesting though. It's like it went by unnoticed, but now that all this Me Too stuff is on the airwaves, I'm like, a little bit more inclined to be looking at things to see if they're inherently systematically racist or misogynistic?
You know what? Like, yeah, this was like that's a huge part of some of the things I talk about actually in my big book coming out, my big academic work, which is like my opus magnum. That's like my life's work. And yeah, I studied a lot of endemic cultural gender issues stuff. You know, I studied a lot of feminist theology and feminist cultural criticism, which of course, you know, hopefully everyone is open to what the actual word actually means, which but yeah, a lot of that thinking
equality between the genders.
Yeah, like some of the books that look at just even the way we use metaphor, like the metaphors of transcendental deity or supernatural deity versus the body images of God that exist and that are even biblically very strongly based.
Right.
Right. I mean, like in the Genesis, God has what's more shocking, the fact that, you know, God is walking around, or the fact that God has a backside? Like, how does God have a backside? I mean, the characters are so heavily anthropomorphized that it really gives us grounds to question the transcendental view of deity that has led to us having this pervasive view of an interventionist supernatural God who chooses when and where to act and how to act. And it's great fun. Right. On TV shows and other supernatural films, but it's super damaging. That's my technical term for us as a society and for us as spiritual people, and we're all spiritual people, right? So it affects our ethics, our basic decision-making factor, and it ultimately leads back to our intuition, which is, you know, what the great work is sort of all about. I mean, if there's a philosophical word for our holy guardian angel, I'd say it's intuition, though. It's a heavy word. I mean, here's a fun fact. The greatest philosopher who wrote ever on intuition and also time and memory as its basis and the basis for spirit is the French philosopher Henri Bergson, the brother of Mina Bergson Mathers.
Interesting.
Yeah, right? I know. The coincidence is just pretty fucking awesome, to be honest. That's my academic opinion. Bringing it mainly back to Joe, I guess.
We brought up Joe for a second, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm still sort of, that's where I'm sort of got left. I mean, what you were mentioning in the gender issues and stuff, I've been thinking about a lot as I've been, getting back into rebuilding my circle and doing the work. The language that was so, when I enrolled in seminary and in grad school, the first syllabus, the first day of class, they specified in writing guidelines, no sexist language, and I was like, "What's that?" And you're not allowed. There's no sexist language allowed. Like, yeah, if you used either proper academic form to avoid gender pronouns altogether, or you followed the rules, and there's new rules, and these are old now, and they were just coming into vogue in universities. And they're taken a lot more for granted today. Like, you don't.
So if you're studying a document, though, then surely you can read the document as it is.
Of course.
But then talk about the document in a way that's not racist or sexist.
Well,
maybe pointing out the inherent racism and sexism in the document as you go. Yeah.
Well, that's not a problem, of course.
But then that's the only thing people will get out of it. Like, people throw the baby out with the bathwater in general.
Mean, the ad hominem fallacy is a pretty stupid one.
It's hard to get around. Most people don't understand why ad hominem fallacy is a fallacy, or that it is.
The issue, let's just say the issue of anti-intellectualism that's become so pervasive is a whole other topic that we could probably spend another 2-3
and a lot of that's rooted in religion too, and Catholicism, and
I don't know, or did it come out of something else and affect it? That's like, we could really get into that, like, big time. There's lots to say about, and there's a lot already that has been said on it, right? That's one of the problems to talk about it, I think, intelligently, is like there's so much on it that we just mostly ignore. Or just don't.
I know in America, the original teachers were indentured servants, which put them on a very low, class level. So education was always in the collective consciousness of the forming colonies that became the United States of America. The educator was down there with Street Sweeper and a few other things. And
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually characterized really well in the Baroque cycle by the novelist Neil Stevenson. In the books Quicksilver, they're set during and he characterizes Isaac Newton, and like for thousands of pages, and shows you all the experiments, brings in what bits of Kabbalah and alchemy he was into, and really characterizes the fusion that was going on in, as he imagines it would have been in a mind like Isaac Newton, as he's trying to differentiate what is science, what is nature, from what is alchemical blinds and occult tomfoolery.
As he gradually gets mercury poisoning through his hat.
And spirituality, he was looking for science in spirituality, and that's was going to be a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
But somehow he managed to wrangle some accurate understandings of science from, spiritual alchemy and all these other religious writings of the Kabbalists and such stuff, and just through observation. He would, there's a chilling chapter where he describes the shrieks of a dog that's being experimented on, his arms pinned to a board while still alive, sounds like this cry of a man. It's just chilling to read these vivid descriptions of what people like Newton had to do, more so far as we know, to be able to uncover and create the world we have today, where we can
So he was testing on animals. Well, fuck calculus.
Yeah, I know.
I was into calculus before, but now I'm not into it because Isaac Newton tested on animals.
Yeah, I mean, the ad hominem fallacy is sort of sad, but we can't
make light of. Yeah,
you can't. I mean,
it's hard to separate those things. I mean, Beethoven was a bit of an asshole, but we don't really remember that, apparently. We just remember the music.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not so bad. It's the ad hominem fallacy applies especially more to not discounting someone's work, but rather the logic. It's very formal logic and thinking. I think it's much more, it's not so invalid to discard you can discard someone's work because they were a horrible human being. But you can't to throw out someone's logic because they were a horrible human being.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's
you can take them off of hero status.
Yeah, you can if we both do a math
maybe
equation,
remove statues of them.
Yeah. If we both do a math equation, nothing either of us does can change how correct one of us is in our personal lives. Nothing personal about us can affect how correct that equation is. Whereas if we do a painting of our worst crime, then we could be demonstrating quite fairly that one of us should be discarded along with the painting.
Right.
Right, because that's awful. Get out of here.
In a way, I sometimes, a lot of my guests, look to me as someone who knows more than they do, but you've read a lot more books and have had a lot of similar experiences as me. So, it makes me think that, in a way, being humble about one's ignorance allows for the possibility of learning and allows for the possibility of a sharing where a lot of people can listen to it, like this one. Sometimes I come off as a know-it-all, and it's unfortunate. I got that from my dad, who actually did know it all, but the way he spoke to his students rubbed off on me at a young age, which annoyed the fuck out of everyone. Understandably so.
I had that, yeah. I suffered that criticism a lot.
Well, actually, technically speaking, it's fuck you, you're 5, you don't know shit. So I went through a lot of that.
Yeah.
But it's part of why being a yoga teacher works pretty well for me.
That's actually one of the things I like, and if people rag on the priesthood a lot, but one of the things I liked about learning rigorous academia in a religious setting was there was an extra dose of humility, There was definitely that, because we have class together and we talk about these tough subjects of philosophy and history, and then we'd go worship together, and then we'd go do prayer or centering prayer, and there was Wiccans and Unitarians and it was an interdenominational seminary.
Oh, how interesting.
So there's from every you had to be ultra respectful of everyone's the amount of classes we had just learning pastoral care for whether it's people in hospitals or like my first work as a priest in training at St. Augustine's was to go to old women's houses and talk to them about their husbands who had just been either dead or put in a home down the street, and they only see us every Tuesday. And I'm trying to, I'm trying to pastor to these people. Really, then when you go back to the rigorous academics, it takes some of the snootiness out of your pride and presumptiveness, because you're face to face with the application, and that's what they call praxis, right? Theory informing practice, and then practice transforming theory. And I was allowed to do that in the academic environment, and they don't take it too seriously. As they said, if the King James Version was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. That's a joke, right?
King James Version.
Yeah. So the lightheartedness around these seriously divisive subjects could often, was just very, because like Howard, and it taught me a lot. I thought many of the years I was there, I was like, if I am ever back involved in the occult world again, I would like to bring some of that awareness and open-mindedness with me, because God knows it's just, it's any kind of time you have groups of people, whether any organization. It's just a hotbed for narcissists and people who want power and attention, and never did the work themselves, so they want to just make other people do it.
Yeah,
you can't do this work. You can't do this work except by yourself. I mean, that's it. That's probably why I feel so much today. Now I don't have any pull to. Well, the drive, unfortunately, for every one of us as adepts is to always teach. Like, we can't really escape that, I think. Otherwise, we face severe mania. Like, once you reverse the circulation of your light from dark to light, you're projecting, not absorbing. You try it, you absorb, but you absorb through projecting, and the cycle just goes the opposite direction, right? That's the difference between the lesser and the greater circulation. Lasts longer. And I've got a thing coming out on that too, which connects with my studies on the 7 deadly sins and the tunnels of Set.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, finally releasing that document as well, but I have to retype it up from fresh because it was part of this bunch of stolen property. So I've recovered copies of a lot of documents, and fortunately I had some backups in some secondary adept grade material that I'd recovered. So just getting that stuff out, because otherwise it'll just be lost. Because that was a very you're remembering the classes,
Yeah, you had a class on the Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah, and the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, was that the same class?
Yeah, well, there was different versions. There was version appropriate for the for Practicus and for the Outer Order.
Oh,
and, I see. Because I
think I saw both. Because you taught one while I was up there.
I was in Practicus at the time. It was part of my very intense alchemy. But I was actually asked to even then give the second. I did the research we weren't supposed to dabble in even studying the Qliphoth hardly at all, right?
Right.
And our order, for the listeners that don't know, really separated Enochian into the second order, as well as focused on not dabbling in anything slightly gray, really. Definitely lots of gray, but definitely no dark forces. Like, that's just part of our. That was part of our thing, right? Staying focused on the light, or as TDL would always say, look up before you look down. And you don't want to just dive into the investigation of demons and start taking shots at the altar to some demon. I don't know. I hear stories about what the kids are doing these days, and I have nothing against Solomonic or Goetic work or whatever, but again, like, you don't have to work with Azrael to have your life turned upside down. I mean, me and my protege RO, right? He and I did one working with the table and the Sigillum Damet, and the original tablets that were up when you and I were initiated, and the Sigillum. And we worked with Ave one time, and we didn't talk for 5 years after that. The turnover in our life after that night was astounding.
Wow. Isn't Ave the one who told Dee and Kelly to swap wives?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's I could tell you exactly what happened, but I'll save it in the
Somewhere in that ballpark.
It's pretty remarkably insane. But whatever.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, it was insane. But that's life, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't know the whole story till recently, but now I do. So it's like I was busy living my own life. So what can I say? I had other things to do.
Yeah.
I've always been lucky because I've always enjoyed focusing on the work. You know, the Golden Dawn was an escape from a very troubled home for me that was inundated with unstable, magical, and occult dignitaries that just, you know, fascinated me, but also created so much uncertainty in my upbringing and childhood, and you know, and led to so much abuse, like you know, a lot of psychological and physical abuse, that it was just really hard to want to stay there. I need an escape, and you know, Wicca wasn't quite it, because the covens, you know, somehow I managed to get into the Golden Dawn. It was probably my mixture between my mom, you know, it's described in the book. It's described. Yeah. It's like, well, you shouldn't read it. You should not read it. No one should read it. They should just go do it themselves and go join an order. Yeah. You know, like I like what Valentine Tomberg says in Meditations on the Tarot. The path of the Hermeticist is really, you know, one that you do because you have to, and you can't do any other path. I mean, he sort of describes it almost like it is a path for the disabled, the spiritually disabled, and we do stuff that no one else will do or can do or want to do, and even if that's just to provide a pathway of spirituality and transformation for the few of us that there are called to it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was reflecting while you were saying that on...
we can also my motto, my outer order motto is Rumpens Catene, which in Latin means broken of chains. So like,
interesting.
It was pretty much in the cards to be a traumatic, bumpy ride.
Yeah.
And the order
I was thinking about how the
very much right, and it
I'm
was
sorry,
the order. You see, the order, you guys, and my life with you guys, and in the Order International was because it was so big when we were in it. It was big, like, you know, there's just temples everywhere, and we were flying to Strasbourg or all over the place.
Yeah.
It was a much more functional family than the one I came from.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah. My mom sort of trusted it, I guess, with my family's background in Freemasonry and her own backgrounds with different groups. And, you know, we were raised in as a yogic family in Eastern Vedic spirituality.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Lots of biography. Well, hey.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest on the Esoterinerd podcast today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Should we end with the prayer? For
sure. Would you like to say a prayer?
We could do if you have time, we could do the invocation for Joe.
The invocation?
We could do that for Joe right now.
What invocation?
The Azrael.
Oh, you want to run through the Azrael invocation?
Well, we could just read it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, unless you've got a rush. I have like...
Oh, no, go for it.
All right. Yeah, that way people can see if they like it, or that way Joe can hear us. I don't know. I miss that guy, man. Life's too short, way too short. And
I know, he was 44. It's really changing my perspective on like what I'm doing in my life in the present day. You know, like I'm thinking too much about retirement and not enough about what I'm doing right now. You know, so I'm moving that way.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much, you know, moving on from my whole life here as well. So, yeah, we'll see each other on the road, brother.
Yeah.
All right.
So, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, here we go. They're sort of poetic, aren't they, in their structure? Just for Joe. Hekos este bibloi. In the name of the Lord of life and the Lord of death, in the name of all the ageless forms that pass like shades and shadows into Hades and Sheol, do I invoke the angel of the powers of death. Between the present and the past, between this world and the next, by those powers and spirits and dominions of the universe, I invoke the holy angel from the water of life, Azrael. O thou child of the great transformers, I invoke thee to me in this darkest of hours. Raise me from the ashes where I lie unto thee. Bring me as a phoenix to the true life above, Azrael. Angel of death, angel of change, gird us with thy strength to overcome our deep fears. Azrael, bring us to you across the river of dreams. Take us to you from this world to that other. Azrael, release us from this cycle of death and rebirth. Azrael, bear us to the kingdom where shadow is shown to shadow and face meets darkening face in you. Angel of the wings of visions am I. Mover of the boat and collector of the coins, I am the heart that longs for its release. I am the tear that desires to run dry. I am the hand that reaches and takes hold of naught. I am the nothing and the all of the earth. I am the cat that wakes in the night, the lark without voice. My song is a dirge to the life uncreated. Hollow is the mind that dwells not on me. Empty is the dream that dreams not of life's end. I am the passer of those in between. Crooks, level bar of iron to the heaven of night. Walker in two worlds is my name. Kiss my cheek and I will smile, and we shall be one in the sight of the Lord. A universe is born in the palm of my hand, and to dust all is made when I close my eyes. I am the slayer of all wicked dreams, the destroyer of all thoughts and feelings perverse. Hand in hand do I walk with life, and never shall my way be lost to you. All paths are my path, all roads are my road. I am the toll and the ferryman of all. My wings shall bear you and my arms embrace. All hearts are restless until they rest in me. I am the shadow on the hill at sunrise. I am the knight who battles till dawn, and never shall my sword arm fall in its fight. Never shall I lose in God's battle for the light. In every spark of light do I hide. When you lie by yourself, I lie at thy side. Be with me and in me and through me, and you will meet the self who is in you and yet who dwells in my land. I am the life that is laid down for death, and I am the death that leads to new life. Child am I of the forces of time, master am I of your soul's resting place. Walk now thy way upon the pathway to truth. Fall not to the side and to the shells that await. Walk on with me and keep fast my hand. Thy land is a land out of sight. Enter with me to the kingdom of light. Sheol and Shemaim are the worlds between. Between these two shall you call up to me. Come thou forth and follow me, for all that has lived is subject unto me, and every spirit of the black earth and spirit of the light air within Shemaim and down in Sheol, upon the land and in the water, of raising cyclone and scorching fire, and every spell and spirit of God the vast one knows my name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon, brother.
Absolutely.
Peace.
Peace.
Much love.
Bye. Thank you, Frater RC, for being our guest on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. Thank you to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofukuin for the music you're hearing right now. Thank you to Camille and Kennerly for the harp intro and outro to the episodes themselves. Thank you to Koji Kondo for the theme to Zelda and indeed many other original NES games. Special thanks to Wolfshish Kilar, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, for the soundtrack to Bram Stoker's Dracula. Special thanks to Yakety Sax for the theme to the Benny Hill Show. And most importantly, thank you to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast. Keep an eye on the crookedpath.biz for more information about the 360-degree live seance that I'll be attending at 8:30 p.m. Halloween night. Thank you all for tuning in. Good night.